Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be here with you, Russell, with all the good people, our partners, and every day, especially in days like today. What I wanted to speak today is not only our specific cooperation that we're doing in the Galilee, but also where I think Israel stands as this war is going forward and as we need to think about the day after. And what I want to talk about is truthfully for us to look in the mirror, even though our soldiers are still fighting, and to talk about the need for a paradigm shift, security-wise, diplomacy-wise, and economic-wise. October 7th massacre was perhaps for many of us a shock that we've only heard that happened to Jews in the diaspora. For us Israelis who serve in the army, I was in Special Forces of Galilee for many years. My brother, my sister, my family members all serve. And many of us serve so that there's going to be a contract, unwritten contract between the country and the citizens, that the citizens will never be neglected on the border like they were in October 7th. The paradigm in which you can live next to a terrorist organization and make sure that they will be quiet by helping them make money, transfer money, and pray that they will not shoot rockets at you is gone. It was led by certain governments. I'm not going to blame specific people, but I'm going to say that that paradigm is over. We will never agree to live alongside a terror-run state. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter whether it's in the north or in the south. It needs to be understood that we will not accept it. And the terror-run state is not only by having them get the ammunition. I think you need to understand that over the last few years, Hamas was transferring $2.5 billion a year in order to finance 500 kilometers of terror tunnels, missiles, and the apparatus which probably only few countries in Europe have the money to operate. 400,000 people were evacuated from their home, and what we need to understand is that it is Israel, or certain leaders in Israel, that thought that transferring money to Hamas would keep them quiet. And what people don't understand, and we have a company called Erel, which kept on catching the transfer of money and shouting they're getting an enormous amount of money. How did ISIS begin to succeed? ISIS began to succeed when it got a hold of oil reserves and started trading oil in the black market. Terrorist organizations need money in order to operate. In 2014, Hamas was crumbling. It didn't have a penny to pay salaries to the people that they were trying to recruit, the terrorists that were trying to recruit. There was an opportunity there to try to take somebody else, like the Palestinian Authority, and put them there instead. People in Israel at the time didn't accept that. Israel needs a paradigm shift on security, on diplomatic, and on economic level. The security paradigm shift says that we can't live there with a terrorist state, that we can't finance it. You know, in the last week alone, our companies showed the Swiss, the French, and the Italian banks And the Bahrain banks, we sold in the last week with one of our companies 4 systems, 2 in Saudi Arabia, 1 in Bahrain, and 1 in UAE, to enable them to stop terror financing, because they felt like the money laundering that they were protecting against drug trafficking is one thing, but they need to protect against terror financing. It sounds anecdotal. Without money, terror cannot operate. And if you block the money, you block their ability to operate in a big way. And when I talk about a paradigm shift, I'm talking about a diplomatic paradigm shift as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this week, one of the greatest statesmen, sometimes controversial, in the 20th century, Henry Kissinger, halach le'olamo. Henry Kissinger understood, and people criticize him for what he did in Cambodia, and people criticize him what he did in different parts of the world. But in Yom Kippur War, if we didn't have Kissinger at the last part of the war that allowed us to negotiate with the Egyptians and the Syrians a ceasefire, we couldn't have ended the war in the way that we wanted it. Military force is important, and without that, Israel cannot exist. But without a diplomatic hand, you are fighting with one hand only. And it's about time that a smart country like Israel starts using its brain in addition to using its force. And in the region today, we are not alone. In the last few years, our companies, from the Galilee also, we had the Minister of Agriculture from the UAE. She visited us in the Galilee to do a food tech project for smart protein in the UAE, in the Galilee. What I'm saying to you, in the last few years, in the UAE, in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco, slowly in Tunisia, in Bahrain, we've been cooperating. These people are not strangers to us. And by the way, as we're doing deals in these very days, they're saying to us quietly, finish the job. Fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism, is as bad for them as it is bad for us. So any reconstruction of Gaza on the day after needs to work with our allies in Egypt. You're seeing how they're helping us on the day-to-day. In Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Jordan, in the UAE, and of course, I don't think that we've seen, and I know you guys have criticism about your presidential candidacies and all that. From an Israeli perspective, what Biden did over the last few weeks to bring a US president to support unequivocally a country like Israel at its time of need was something that we are proud of and we respect greatly. It is about time that a US president has a policy in the Middle East and doesn't run away from it whenever there's a little bit of trouble. It's about time that a president in the US understands that in the Middle East there's two camps. There's the fundamentalist camps with Iran, with a proxy military state in Lebanon, a proxy military state in Gaza, a proxy military state that's forming in Syria, in Yemen, and on the other side, there are Sunni countries. They may not be writing Jeffersonian democracy when they go to sleep, but they want to create economic development, alternative things that they want to build, and Israel is going to be in the center of what we're building for the region economically. So together with the US and Europe and NATO and the UK and a bunch of other enlightened countries and the Arab countries, we need to start thinking about the day after. You can't think about the day after only when you finish the war, because thinking about the day after could be an exit strategy from the war that gets you to the right place. I was in Lebanon, Be'orev Golani, pressing the PLO in 1982. At the end of the day, the PLO didn't get out of Lebanon because we shot them out. They got out of Lebanon because we were shooting, but the French president got them out on a boat and got them over to Tunis. So we used a diplomatic tool in addition to a military tool. And if you think about it, you have Egypt, you have the UAE, you have Bahrain, you have Saudi Arabia. These are real countries that want to see Gaza in a different way, but want to see the region in a different way. You have the US, you have the European Union, you have the UK, you have NATO. And in the middle, yes, you may not like them, you may not think that they love Israel, but you have the Palestinian Authority, maybe with a new refresh on the Palestinian Authority. For 30 years, and I was in the Security and Foreign Affairs Committee of the Parliament, we've been cooperating with them on a security level. We may not think that they're perfect, we may not think that they're wonderful, but they have been a partner that didn't support terror, but fight terror. And in some incarnation of that in Gaza, with the support of with the Arab countries, we need to put somebody else in charge. If you're not going to put somebody else in charge, no matter how many specific Hamas terrorists you're going to kill, you're not going to have another chapter. And you need to think about this now. The U.S. is asking you to think about it. Instead of being dragged into this, why don't we lead it? And to say that it's easy, no. Our neighbor is not Canada, but we can still work forward in order to try to shape our own future. And Hezbollah, Nissan Ze'evi, the guy that's managing our hub in the Galilee, couldn't come because he's with the Kitat Konenut in Kfar Giladi. He's recruited. Dvorah here is with me, my partner, who you know. So Hezbollah has a much stronger army than Hamas. They have more missiles, and they're sitting on the border. And Israel will need to deal with it. And it's very complicated to think when exactly you want to deal with it, because Biden asked us not to deal with it, because if we would have had a war with Hezbollah, we would have had to shoot the Syrians and the Iranians as well in order to have an alliance of power. And that would have created a regional war. And the Americans asked us, don't take this into a regional war now. And we accepted their recommendation, even though many people in the Israeli IDF wanted to go in and to clear the Hezbollah up until the Litani River, 29 kilometers north of the border for Israel. But I want to say something. What do I mean by using diplomacy in addition to military force? You know that there's a Security UN resolution, Security Council 1701, that states that after 2006, the second Lebanon war, that the Hezbollah needs to be north of the Litani River. It means it's 29 kilometers from the borders. Did you hear Israel put this on the table of the UN Security Council? Did you hear people talking about this? Do I think that it's going to be easy just with military maneuvers to take them to the north? No. But there's a narrative to be told. The world needs to understand. Because tomorrow we're going to be dragged into a war in Lebanon. The world doesn't understand that Hezbollah is sitting on our border and is using all its might, and it's going to go or plans to go into our kibbutzim, into our villages, into our cities, where we are operating together. You, Russell, and us, we're operating there together. So it needs to be put on the table again. And then finally, economically. That I understand firsthand. I was fortunate in JVP, and I'm a Jerusalemite, Ani Yerushalayim. We created 160 companies, and we were fortunate enough that some of the largest companies out of Israel in the last 30 years came out of Israel. And together, a few years ago, we embarked on the north together. Remember after the Depression in the US when you had Hoover as your president. Some of you don't remember. I mean, people couldn't get a job. The economy was stale. What did Franklin Delano Roosevelt did? He brought the New Deal. He brought the New Deal. He was building dams. He was building roads. He was building facilities that gave people jobs. We, after the war, need a new deal for the North and for the South in Israel in order to get the young people back to their place and have a quality of life looking forward. And remember that the victory image of Israel is not just on the battlefield. One of the first guys from Sayeret Givati that died, that was killed, I was with his parents and they were saying, you know what he really liked? Yes, he was a warrior, but he was a young guy. He was going to make movies. He was a sensitive, poetic soul. And I said to myself, this is a warrior that fought like crazy, and that's his legacy. Create movies, listen to people, bring creativity to the forefront of his life. And I said to myself, you know why we're going to win? Because our legacy is a legacy of life, not a legacy of death. And the legacy of life has to do with economic development, with jobs, with things that we'll talk about today. And the JNF, you guys have been an amazing partner to our initiative in the Galilee. And let's just look at a few things that we've been doing. Over the last few years before the war, there's a food tech industry park. There's a micro-industry site. There's a food tech incubator, Migal, which is 150 PhDs out of the kibbutzim that finally decided not just to invent the next Apple for the next kibbutz, but also invent startups for the world. The Galilee Research Institute, Tel Chai College, the National Fund that instituted the International Food Tech Center, and the Startup Studios. We're doing all of this together. We're doing all of this because it's not just one initiative in the Galilee. We're doing it together, and we're changing a region, the Upper Galilee. Margalit Startup City was something that we built with the help of people from JNF. We couldn't take a donation at the time because the thing that we wanted to donate, the government didn't accept. Somebody blocked us. And I was in the parliament, so I couldn't really do business. So what I did, I got out of parliament. When you get out of parliament, nobody can stop you. If you want to invest and create a building, you invest and create a building. So we bought the ugliest building in Kiryat Shmona by far. But we turned it around, and JNF, and Zusman and Greenbaum family specifically invested with us. And this may be a small project, but this project is the center of a new phase, a new vision for the Galilee, creating the Galilee, bringing agriculture and technology together to create Israel as the center for food tech and ag tech in the world. Yes, in the Galilee. And what's been going on? Nestle, Merio, Cisco, Netafim, a lot of people came and joined us. JNF and us were approaching people. We have things that are both for-profit and non-profit. And then the down-and-out city of Kiryat Shmona, which when we came in, got the title, the poorest city in the country because they had 160 million shekel deficit, I think, and you can see the building, how ugly it was on the right. We started doing something that brought together the Ironim, the guys from the city, and the kibbutznikim, and the moshavnikim, and the Druze villages and the Arab villages together, but the center is Kiryat Shmona. And we have 280 startups that applied. It's a region that never had startups. It's a region that was always behind, always looking at Tel Aviv and being jealous. And today, we're not doing things that you do in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, we do fintech, we do cyber. Here we do food tech. Here, it's the agricultural land of Israel. We take the startup fever to something that Israel until now didn't do. And then it's the fastest growing ecosystem with 180 startups that are working there, with 27 strategic partnerships with international players, and with amazing research facilities. But we also have a community. The community is nonprofit, and this is what you guys are helping fund, and this is what we're doing. One of the biggest things is called Galilee. Dvorah will tell you more about it later. Galilee is a community of 1,200 women entrepreneurs in the broad sense of the word. So you could be a high-tech entrepreneur, or you can own an ice cream parlor. Doesn't matter. You're an entrepreneur, right? Small business, large business. And what these women are doing by getting together is creating a narrative, a community for the Galilee that brings the communities together. And now when people are evacuated, it's the address for working together on keeping some of these small businesses alive. The same thing that you have entrepreneurs community in the college of Tel Chai, the young students in the university. The arts and culture, or one of our leader of the community, you know her. She is bringing together music and arts and technology, because they say that wherever you don't have live music, young people don't stay. So that's one of our next phases of the Margalit Startup City Center in the Galilee. And of course, the schools. All the schools in Kiryat Shmona and in the region study. We have 60 one-year volunteers, Shnat Shirut, a year of service. So they're the ones that are operating the plan. So they study math, they study Hebrew, they study English. In the Arabic community, they study Arabic, but they study food tech. So you may be in the school that is the most behind, but you're a food tech entrepreneur. You're involved in a project. And it's unbelievable how many entrepreneurs and how many times that our schools won international and national awards. And this is in a poor city that was not considered part of the high-tech thing. And then Tel Chai College, when we talk what's next. We were instrumental in creating an advocacy of a resolution that will turn Tel Chai College from a college to a university, the first university in the Galilee. What does that mean? It means that they will move from 3,500 students to 20,000 students in 5 years. And if I can think of an abundance of young, dynamic people coming to the Galilee, this is a great initiative that would allow us to welcome many people. And then what we're doing today is we're actually putting together another economic project. It's called the Terminal. You can see that it's already built, the first phase. It's a place which helps food tech companies manufacture their first batches of amazing products, because food tech is not theory, you got to taste it. So when the international clients come in, they do it. We invited you to be a part of this. Once again, it's being built as the state-of-the-art facility with Muriot, the French, and the Tel Chai International College. And the one thing that we're doing next to Migal has 150 PhDs. We're creating a building for startups, because research is great, but I want to take the research to company creation. I want to see what it is that you can do from your research. They can have a company, can have jobs, can have things that will create economic development. And this is my last secret that I'll let you in on. A city, you know, they're already done with all the harchavot, expansions in the kibbutzim, so when young people come, they don't have housing to give them. You guys help with a few things, but what am I looking at? I'm looking at, why don't we create a new neighborhood in Kiryat Shmona? A multi-purpose neighborhood where you had young people, students, young professionals, technology, retail, and arts in a city like Kiryat Shmona, with new architects, with new ideas, with the participation of you guys, the kibbutznikim, everyone. Because people need to understand, you can have the greatest kibbutz. If you don't have a strong city, your kids will just go to the Tel Aviv. So we can take a city like Kiryat Shmona, which is now undervalued, put something in place around some of the themes, and it's also a good and sound economic investment, so that it doesn't have to be just on the basis of donations. It could stand on its feet for the next few years. And these are some of the things that we're inviting you to come. I just want to say last, I live in Jerusalem. My hub, near the German colony, near the old train station, those that have visited me, overlooks the old city. And people ask me about the dark hours, not just for Israel, but also for our people, the Jewish people. And I just want to remind them that in the past, some of the darkest hours brought the greatest visions that are responsible for bringing us all together here. Yeshayahu ben Amos, one of the greatest prophets that gave us so many amazing ideas, was standing where my hub in Jerusalem is, watching the old city. The city, it was a city, it wasn't called the old city, it was the city. And he was seeing the Babylonians take the men, the women, the children with blood, with fire. And it was bad. And these days, when you were exiled as a people, you were gone. But what did he say? He brought up a vision that was spiritual, that many of us are following, about the role of the Jewish people. He said that at the end of days, the other people will see your God as their God. You don't have to be religious. It talks about morality. And they will come to Jerusalem, and they will build, and they will turn their swords into plows. And he gave us a vision that I think years after that is bringing us together as a people. We are at a crossroad in Israel. We are at a crossroad of Jewish people. The kind of things that we are doing together in Israel today is light onto the nation. And if we do it, we will give the next chapter to the young people in Israel in a way that they've never seen before by our partnership together. Thank you.